Place Part 2 review. We reviewed this last year, but that was as a joke. Welcome to the real review of A Quiet Place Part 2. I'm Romano. Who am I joined with?
Sparkz. Yes, absolutely. I remember this bit where you were just like, because I watched it from last year, and you're like, I'm John Krasinski. Really shove it on my face.
I'm joined by Sparkz. Hey, Ben Magnet, Brandon T. McClure. This isn't going to be a quiet podcast because that'd be ASMR, and I don't like those videos.
I was going to be
Welcome
like,
to the FakeNerd podcast review after dark.
No, don't do it.
Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting sound aliens.
Oh,
If we were doing our like mics recording, I would be tempted to do like a whole Quiet Place
thing?
review in ASMR. Like,
wow.
Nobody would want to hear it,
I
No.
definitely wouldn't, but that's a me thing.
or
Spoilers.
everyone would want to hear it.
It's our highest viewed episode.
Spoilers for A Quiet Place Part 2. As Ryan said, we've already reviewed it, so we're going to see what
Real
they changed.
spoilers. Now real spoilers.
We are reviewing the real movie at this point. So yeah, full spoilers from here on out. You have been warned. Don't watch this video if you haven't seen the movie, or do. It's really up to you, but I'd recommend you not.
I mean, if you're the type of person who likes spoilers, I don't judge.
I don't think this is a movie that has lots of spoilers, to be honest.
I think that's true.
I think
Yeah.
this is just I'm gonna go into my review now. I think this is a really good sequel, but I don't know how much it really it wasn't necessary. It didn't add anything new to the world enough to be like, oh, I needed the sequel, but it was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. Like, I think it's a better scary movie than the first one. I don't think it's a better movie. There's definitely some character choices that I'm like, oh, you're just dumb to be dumb, I guess.
I do
But
think...
I like it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I do. I don't necessarily disagree with you. But I will say that I did appreciate seeing the more larger world. I would have liked more of the... I'm happy we got the stuff on the island, but I kind of wanted more about the people on the docks.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And we got so little of it. I'm like, okay, that was a cool little tease. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have liked more of that, because I found that stuff to be the more interesting stuff. If you're going to do the sequel, I think go more into that.
This was the closest we've gotten to a Last of Us movie before we actually get the Last of Us TV show. And that stuff I really, really enjoyed.
Sparkz?
That's
I more or less echo a lot of what Ryan said. I think the main point I disagree with him on is I don't think this is... I guess not necessarily, I wouldn't say the word scary. I don't necessarily think this is a scarier movie than the first one. I think the first one did a better job of tension than this one did. Yeah. And I pretty much am in the same boat as Ryan, where like I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I don't feel like there was a lot provided here of what I really wanted another thing in this world to be. So I definitely like, and we'll get into some critiques on it where like I think that while I still really enjoyed the film, I think the strongest failing of the film is the fact that they separate the family. That as a concept, even though like certain aspects of it work for me and everything, like the idea that this second outing, most of the runtime, they're all broken up and on their own is kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Not what I was looking for or anticipating.
Ben?
Yeah, so I also really enjoyed this film. I think I'm going to echo quite a bit of what Ryan said, but one of the things I really enjoyed was the world building aspect of how other people are surviving. The fact that these creatures can't swim, I think is like, okay, so a bunch of like Hawaii is probably safe. Japan is probably safe. Taiwan is probably safe.
Unless something landed there.
Unless something landed and then they're screwed.
Yeah.
But
Maybe I would buy Hawaii because it's such a small island in the grand scheme of things. But Japan, I'm sure something landed on Japan.
at least one. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is like, I was sitting, just to piggyback off that, Ben, like I was sitting in the film and I was like, we don't really know, like, what if it's only like all of the continents on the west that are connected, like that's where it landed, that's where it happened, but like Europe and Asia and Japan, like Africa, they're all fine.
Yeah.
Like it didn't happen there. Like what if that's the case? That'd be wild.
See, that's what I mean. Where like,
And they're just like, wow, those guys are screwed. We just don't go over there anymore.
like I don't have a lot of like really negative opinions like on this movie, but like the world building that it did add, I liked, but it just, for me, for being a sequel, it wasn't enough to push this forward. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this felt like more like a 0.5 than a actual sequel where like, there was a point where I thought,
good way to describe
I thought that we were going to get like a new monster or just something, like there was a point where I thought we were going to get like a little girl alien monster. I'm like, that would have been too far. but that's just the goth people. But like I was expecting just a little something more. And again, it's not like I need every movie to escalate everything exponentially like Fast and Furious, but like this was just, oh, it's another one of these. And it was,
I have just the movie for you, Ryan. Independence Day Resurgence.
that movie.
I haven't seen it.
I might watch that before I watch this again.
It's fun.
It is fun.
I agree with Ben. I agree. I think we're all on the same page that we liked it, but it just didn't quite progress the franchise quite as far as we wanted. Ben, you have more to say?
I just remember my point. So I still think I like the first one a lot more. The first one, I felt like looking back on the first one, because I haven't seen it again since we saw it in theaters, was the first one was horror movie with a lot of really good thriller aspects. This one is more of a thriller than it is a horror movie. Because there are tensions. It's like, oh, what's going to happen? Like the scene with the kid, with the son and the baby in the airtight part of the bunker, where he locks himself in and they're both running low on oxygen. It's like
that was really tense.
That's extremely tense. Whereas in the first one, you're actually, I mean, this one you see the monsters full out. It's like, okay, because we know what they look like. Whereas in the first movie, they're blurs. You barely see them. You see a little bit of their silhouette. There's not.
You see them more towards the end.
Oh, you see them more towards the end. I'm talking about in the beginning of the movie. Like there's still a mystery to these creatures until, of course, the very end when they open up their face and you see. Like,
it's definitely more like the middle of the original, where we have one creep out from the corn and we see it with its ear thing for the first time. I'm not going to say it's the end, but I get you. I get the point you're making.
Yeah. Whereas this one, it still has these tense moments, like when one of the parts of the film I really love where it does with sound. I mean, great job on the sound designer for this film again, is when it goes from the perspective of the daughter to the real world, where you hear nothing and then you hear everything.
That's excellent.
Like after she gets the first aid kit and that skeleton pops out and she's like breathing heavily and you see the creature coming for her. It's like, oh shit, because she's deaf, so she can't hear.
So I want to say real quickly, of all the things that I thought we'd get right about this movie, did not expect the sound cannon.
Listen, was that in the last movie?
Yes.
No. Well, yes.
They just didn't have it portable, but it was the thing in the station at the end. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so like, because at the beginning of the movie, she puts the thing down, and I'm like, mother sound cannon, what? It's a portable sound device, so the sound cannon joke.
It's not what we envisioned. It's not what we envisioned when we came up with it. No, but it is kind of along the same lines.
They use sound as a weapon, which makes sense, which is the type of thing that I want to progress the narrative. Like, how do you fight these aliens? So that's something I really liked. I really liked like the finale, like the aliens. I really like them. Like some people might think they look generic because of their color, but like first of all, they're aliens. Like we don't know what aliens look like. Also, like the weird sound head design really looks great. Like
you know what?
They definitely got a bigger budget this movie.
They could look like a bad robot alien.
Yes,
and they don't, and for that I'm grateful.
Yeah,
they're designed by the same guy who designed Cloverfield Monster.
Were they? Good
for him. Yeah, he's gotten better.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm repeating Brandon's fact from the last time we talked about this.
There you go.
Because I re-listened to it, and Brandon said that because we were saying like they're very Cloverfield Monster-like, and Brandon's like, well, they're designed by the same guy.
Well, there you go.
Well,
learn something.
I'm sure maybe I did say that. Maybe that is true. I know that what he has a thing with noses that I really dislike. That's like his signature. His noses all look the same, and so therefore all of his monsters look very amphibian-like, and I'm just kind of crazy about it. But these monsters don't look like Clover. They kind of like move like him a bit, but they're not quite the same.
The arm design.
Yeah, they're of a design cousin, but they're not designed like specifically to look like them. And I appreciate at least the variant in the design.
It's just one step closer to this being a Cloverfield movie.
I want to get this section out. I think like my number one thing is my favorite part of this movie 100% is the opening.
Yeah.
It's the entire thing taking place during day one. And I sat there, and when we moved on from day one, I'm like, okay, I like 100% would just watch 6 movies of different settings of day one. Like that's really what I want to go see at this moment. Like I want day one in many different places with different characters. That's where I'm at. Which is really very much where I thought I was still going to be. I said this even on our fake review of this, that I think, and I do feel this way, I just want
I totally agree with that, Sparkz.
Just the opening was so good.
Yeah.
The opening, I was 100% like, there were other good things in this movie. 100%. Nothing brought me to the high that I was on the day one stuff. Just like watching the events, especially like the fact that like in this case, like I knew what was going to happen,
but not when,
but not when or how or you know, like, and then watching them like not knowing. The only thing that is kind of my bummer about day one is I kind of wish like we saw the passage of like, you know, we do the jump cut away from the cop car and I'm like, no, I want to know how they got out of that. I want to know how they figured out it was sound.
Yeah.
Like, tell me how they escaped this.
So I actually need your help with this then.
Sure.
Because as much as I like the thing, and I want to say real quickly, I think John Krasinski is really good at Chekhov's gun. He is really in the first movie, in this movie, I think he has a way. It's very simple. It's very, it's a simple technique, but it works really well in this movie of setup and payoff, setup and payoff, setup and payoff, and I think it works really well. But now the opening of of A Quiet Place 1 has missing posters everywhere in the town, and many newspapers laid out from many different days about this thing happening, giving the impression that this thing happened slowly.
Right.
The second movie makes this think that this happened very quickly.
Yeah, because like it's not like they're slow zombies. Like they land and they're immediately destroying everything.
Yes.
Like it definitely seems like it wouldn't happen over a couple of days. Like newspapers would not be making newspapers anymore 3 days later.
I mean,
Right.
I could definitely tell you story bullshit to try to fill in that gap, but the reality is I think they just decided
Who cares?
Who cares
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
original inclination of what they wanted and went with, you know, wanting to create this opening, which I like having the opening, so kind of losing the onus of what that original was. I think this is more true to what we know the aliens to be too. Now that like we've really spent time with them, I kind of don't think that like the progressively slow movement of the aliens taking people makes a lot of sense because they just would go towards sound.
They hate sound so much they run towards it like
Ryan and I were talking about this because I always assume they eat people, but we never see them eat a single person.
They have those teeth.
They just swipe people and move on.
They're
It's all like they
vegetarians.
are clearly just like things that are like, please just shut the F up.
What
move on.
What did we say? Like they're basically the old people of space. They land on the planet. They're just like, shut up!
Yeah,
Get off my lawn.
They just go somewhere. That actually bridges into it. Something I thought we would see in this movie was like them stumbling on some kind of nest or something that showed us what they're doing in their downtime when they're not just swiping at people who make sound.
Yeah.
But we didn't get that. They don't eat people. Apparently, it seems.
Only swipes.
They just really hate sound. I really like, for me, one of my favorite parts of the film, because of, you know, like I'm saying, it's the opening. It's when they stumble into the bar and the girl's got the phone and you're like, please just don't.
The guy,
you know what's
praying.
gonna happen. Yeah, the guy's praying and he's just like, shut up. And that's just basic, like, hopefully it won't come in here. Not even knowing the sound thing yet. And you're like, man, you guys. Ooh.
Have you guys seen, real quick, have you seen the sequel to 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later?
Oh yeah.
There's a very similar scene once the zombies break onto the city and people have to like go and like escape into a apartment store to like survive. And I got a very good vibe.
Sure,
from that.
that's a good pull.
That's a great sequel too.
Then that is a great sequel. The Cillian Murphy's in the first one of that.
He is. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. There's the connection.
There you go.
In the first one, there's a newspaper that says it's sound. You know, and that's like, and that's in the first movie we're led to believe like, oh, that's how they figured it out because the newspapers all told them. But one of the things is I like the opening a whole lot. I think it's incredibly well done. That I'm willing to forgive the fact that the two movies don't line up continuity wise anymore.
For sure. Yeah. They like, like I said, I could make up the story bullshit, which is, you know, a decent chunk of the town managed to survive. They kind of figured it out. They tried to put out an alert. And what way can you put out an alert besides a newspaper? Though printing would
very
be
quietly
loud.
putting it on the doorstep.
But
Yeah.
like you got to put it out somehow so that everybody can see it in wide thing. And maybe missing is just like because people got separated in the scarcity of the day, they're trying to send messages when there's still enough of them, but inevitably as time goes on, people are screwing up, and it's like that's why John Krasinski and his family go, no, we need to just stay on the farm, like we need to totally back off as much as possible. You gotta do the mental gymnastics. Normally I'd say that's not a good sign, but I like the opening enough, I'm willing to just be like,
it's a better version.
I agree. And then the rest of the movie happens, and I'm like, this is fine.
It's good.
I'm enjoying my time.
The bear
I'm
trap,
not crazy about it.
the bear trap is really effective.
Yes,
very effective. Like every time something like this has a lot of really good jump scares. That actually I think are effective, and I definitely know they're effective because both of you were jumping in the theater.
To be fair, Megan was holding my arm, so every time she jumped, I jumped because she jumped.
Got it.
Not necessarily because
Sparkz.
this
Right.
isn't me saying like, "Ooh, I can't be scared. I can't be scared." That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I definitely had a lot of reactions to this because she had reactions to this, and what got me is her like grabbing me. I was like, Jesus fuck.
So it's still effective.
She doesn't normally react that way to movies, at least not as much as this. And to the credit of that, because we're bringing it up, one of Megan's problems was that there was a little bit too much of a reliance on jump scares. Not all of them were great. And what I think is a fair criticism is I find the tension of the silence in the first film more effective than the jump scares in the second.
Oh, sure, yeah.
in many ways, this is a much louder movie.
You will get me or Megan to jump out of our seat with a jump scare. You will get my heart to beat very quickly. With the silence.
Because the jump scare is like 3 seconds and you're back to normal. But when they're trapped in that vault and that baby's screaming and they're both about to die from oxygen deprivation, that's tension, because this is a type of movie where oh, they will kill these kids. I'm not worried about that.
I one of the things that going back to Sparkz, what you said about the splitting up of the family, while I enjoy the parallel of the son and the daughter at the end, I felt like the one story was more interesting for me than the other, and it was Cillian Murphy's and the daughters.
It felt like it was drama that was just unnecessarily needed. They did not need to split the group up. No. They really didn't. They could have rewrote the story in a different way, but I understand why they wanted to tell this.
They could have all gone to the island.
Yeah, I get why they wanted to tell the story. This is Cillian Murphy's movie, if anything, right? And he's awesome. He rules in this movie. He's always good. But I kind of just wish we would have focused on all of them together, because it takes away from the other characters.
I think in any other horror film where the cast isn't as good, and the just the filmmaking isn't as quality, you really have to just be this is kind of weak. On a semantics level, I am fighting constantly with this film to suspend my disbelief. I have to suspend my disbelief that Emily Blunt could do a lot of things she did, having just given birth a day before in the tense situation that she did.
Immediately after the first movie.
Sure. I can let that go, I guess. I cannot, the one I fight the hardest is there's just no version where I can accept beyond we're making a scary movie, so we have to do this. The son with his bad leg going up to the second floor just to use the binoculars to see if she's come back yet. I'm stop it. Come on. What are you doing? And it's all just there to create the he has to screw up to make a sound, to make an alien come. And I'm yeah, I mean, I get it.
We haven't had action in 5 minutes.
But that kid is unnecessarily stupid. I'm sure, Ryan, that's what you were alluding to in your opening remarks. That kid is because all of a sudden lost his brain. He's now an idiot.
He loses his mom and he's just I'm a dumb boy now. And the thing is, I with Sparkz, I think all the actors in this movie are awesome. I think the kids are great. I really like the son. I think he acts really scared really well. I believe that kid. Mm-hmm. It's just why are you doing the things you're doing? You made him dumb just to be scary. And I'm that doesn't make it scary. And
to find the dead body of Cillian Murphy's wife, I felt are you going to just reveal that he killed his wife? What's the point of this sequence?
That they had to think of something that would scare him to make him make a sound, and they were well, Cillian Murphy's Emmett couldn't really bury his wife. That'd be noisy.
Yeah.
So she's just there.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's very like that's the thing is you mentioned mental gymnastics. I'm like I can let a lot of the opening stuff like whatever.
Talk about the well scene.
I am constantly struggling. Yes, I'm constantly struggling with the film to embrace like what it's trying to tell me without it being like, well, you're doing this because you're a horror movie and like that's the only reason. There's no good lore reason why this would be accurate or character reason. Like you're fighting both of those things to make this happen. Right? What Ryan's referring to is the well scene. What really bothers me is that what we have consistently seen with these monsters is like if they hear a sound, yes, they will go for it. But if they hear a louder sound, they will change direction. And Emmett is running towards the town shouting, "Get inside, get inside." But instead the creature's going to attack the guy at the well, making far less noise. Yes, sure. Emmett's bulletproof because of plot. I get it. But like it goes against everything we've ever seen before.
Yeah. Well, the rules of the movie, they don't even agree to them basically.
The monsters in the first movie act very differently than the monsters in this movie. In many ways, there's a whole subplot. I recently rewatched the first movie. I didn't watch it before.
I did too.
The monsters can affect electricity.
The
monsters can affect electricity in the first movie.
In the first one?
Yeah.
Not the second one.
Like the the lights and things like constantly flicker out, and that's your first indication that they're nearby.
Oh wow, weird.
And like that's gone. That's gone in this.
That's weird. Are they more vicious in this movie, or are they like about the same?
I think they're about the same. I think they're about the same vicious, except for the thing that Sparkz is talking about, that they're clearly picking and choosing who they're going after, and not the louder sounds.
I made a joke to Ryan that I'm like, Emily Blunt's real lucky that straight up they don't get Daredevil vision when she's in water.
Yes,
she could have just totally miscalculated that when it's like, actually, I see you more clearly now.
Because that's how it would work.
Yeah, because they can differentiate the sound of water hitting the floor and hitting her.
Yeah.
So they should technically know she's there.
Yeah.
The monster just gets up on his legs and just like, actually, you screwed up here. I can see you better now.
Right. That would have been awesome. Ben, you got anything?
Yeah. So I do agree. There are times I love the daughter and Emmett's story 10 times more than I did Emily Blunt and the kid, and her son. But I really did like the scene when Emily Blunt comes back with the oxygen tanks and she sets one down and she shoots it to blow up that one alien. I just thought that was really cool. I was like, yeah, get some. But I do agree. There are times where the son was going upstairs with a bum leg and he's like, I'm just going to snoop around because I need to find out. It's like, you idiot, just stay inside.
Bro, that leg, like she said, like it didn't get to the bone, but it went through all the flesh. Like that kid should not be walking.
And that kid is so,
let alone climbing upstairs. Like that's my whole thing. Is like, I'm like, forget that you are babysitting. Forget that you are alone. Forget how dangerous all this is. Your own body should be telling you, don't go up a stairs right now. What are you going to do? What are you doing? Like, it's so...
He's progressing the
you
plot.
have to remove things so far to accept that he would do this. It's ridiculous.
I mean, hell, when I busted my toe at work, it was just my toe. The rest of my foot was fine. But even then, there would be times where I'm trying to put all my weight on the rest of my foot besides just the heel. And there are times my body was like, hey, don't do that. I'm like, okay, not going to do that. That hurts.
So, like,
and again, this is a day after the first movie.
This is after she's given birth and had a nail through her foot.
Yeah.
So like
2 days. Like we cover one whole day. They're there a night, and then another whole day, and then that night.
There's still fire happening from the end of that first movie.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I told you when we walked out, I'm like, okay, like I mean, it's a movie, like I get it.
Yeah.
It kind of bothers me that there was no like emphasis at all on like Emily Blunt needing to rest, eat. That it's not something she said to Emmett. Like, I understand that you see the baby and you get this as a situation. I gave birth yesterday.
Yeah.
I need you to go get my daughter. Like that's not something that is used as like, guys, I don't think you're appreciating that she gave birth yesterday.
Oh, literally, again, it's always these situations where like one line can solve so many problems. And she does like she's having the same conversation with Emmett. Hey, go get my daughter. He's like, Emmett, I gave birth yesterday. Give me a break. Give me a break.
Right.
I really love. So real quickly, Emmett, Cillian Murphy knew, for the audience, Cillian Murphy knew the family before the invasion happened.
Yeah.
I really like the scene of the asteroid coming down, by the way. I thought that looked awesome.
Love it. Love it. The whole opening is fantastic.
And and regardless of the fact that like okay, sure, that's a little bit far-fetched, but fine. They're in the same town anyway. I found it hilarious, and I don't know if you guys did either. Everyone is talking about how great John Krasinski is in this movie.
Yeah.
Emmett is like, I'm not him. He was the best. And it's like, you're just like your dad. He was the best person in the whole world.
See, when they were doing that, and like when we first re-meet Emmett, and like he's kind of like skittish about wanting to talk to Emily Blunt. Yeah. I thought it was going to be a situation where like they had an affair in the past, and it was about to become very dramatic. And then I'm like, oh, we're not doing any of that stuff.
No, it's because John Krasinski was just too good.
That's why she leaves her wedding ring.
Yeah, so now the day after her husband dies, she's just going to beg Cillian Murphy.
But it's because Cillian Murphy is now like John Krasinski. You see, he has now become so perfect.
You stumble on something nice there though, which is that like. Something that does bum me out is like something like I don't think the character arcs are progressing very well either.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Like the only person who I think even comes close from the first film, not Emmett. Emmett actually does have
Emmett's like the only
of an arc. But the daughter has a bit of an arc, but I don't feel like it's working as well in conversation with the first one, because in the first one the thing is that like she and her dad were not getting along.
Mm-hmm.
That was a major thing of the first one, and made her like feel bad when he sacrificed.
Because she blames himself. She blames herself for what happened to their brother.
Because Brandon watched this too, so she wanted to be the person that he was taking out and teaching how to do things, because he takes the son out.
Yeah,
and he didn't. He said, "You stay," and you know, kind of sexist of him, but he said, like next time you can go.
Yeah,
and. She's frustrated with that, and then that's the day when everything goes wrong. He sacrifices himself. She feels kind of bad about that, especially because he gave her the device that's able to help them.
Yeah.
And that's not weighing on her as much as I feel like it could have.
The first movie has like no impact on this movie.
There's a moment, which is when she is discussing with him, the brother, in the little thing, and she's saying, "This is my plan. I could go do this thing. I could do this.
I could say this, yeah.
Right." And I wish that a factor of that was that she was driven to do this because she's like trying to make it up to him in a way, like it's her own misguided way of like making amends because he's gone. And I wish that was something that was more present. I wish that was something that was more clear cut. This is what's going on with her. And we don't have enough of that.
Yeah.
And that's a bummer.
It almost feels like this is not the case, but this feels like almost like a soft reboot because they're just ignoring the first movie. In a lot of ways.
That was what I just wrote down. I think Ryan, you stepped on something that really bugs me about this movie, which is the biggest thing about this movie that I don't like, and it is that the first movie doesn't have an impact on this movie.
Because like the alien stuff's different. Like she gave birth, but it doesn't matter. Like all this stuff is like not important. What Sparkz
just said about the daughter. If you're going to make a movie that says Part 2. The implication is that we just watched Back to the Future. And Back to the Future Part 2, that first film has a direct influence on that second movie, mostly because they kind of revisit the first movie. But still, it's really important that those films act as a whole because it's Part 1, Part 2. A Quiet Place Part 1 and Part 2 need to act the same way, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it does only in like. Literally like semantic outlines of the plot, but not in like character stuff, not in world progression stuff. Absolutely, I agree.
And we touched the world building stuff with the doc people, but we never really did more of that. Yeah, I did too.
Straight out of like Last of Us 2. The doc, like straight out of it. I loved it.
The doc people are cool, but this is going to sound kind of weird. They are very much a case of telling me, not showing me. Even though you're not telling me because they don't talk.
And that's you get that.
But here's the thing: they are telling me, not showing me, in the sense that like they are outside of the one guy from Quiet Place Part 1 who just was done and decided to kill himself in Quiet Place Part 1. They are, and then Emmett, our first like real experience of the outside world. And Emmett says like, you don't know what people are like now. But that's not that's not really showing me what have people become. You are giving me like just barely the emphasis of like, yeah, they're bad people now. And it's like, see, bad people, but I don't have enough. Yeah. There's not enough there. Either Emmett needed to explore it more. There needed to be a decompression after the encounter with the doc people where he's talking to Jimon Hansu or the daughter and being like, yeah, it's, you know, it's rough with what that was. Outside, out of mind once it's done.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of really mad that they killed Jimon Hansu.
Oh,
poor
baby.
Jimon. He shows up. Has he ever been a lead actor in anything? This dude is a supporting guy who gets killed in all of his movies. He's so good at
actually like when he showed up.
One of the Atlanteans, Shazam.
Yep. Exactly.
When he was driving them to the station, I'm like, man, he might just make it. I might just make it to the end of this movie. I was excited. I was like, maybe. And then he does the bit where he's like, we might have lost it, my family. And I'm like, please don't just kill him right now. Oh my God. And then the movie ends like 6 minutes later. I'm like, he just needed to live 6 more minutes.
Talk about an abrupt ending too, right? The movie ends and I'm like, oh, it's over? Oh.
Yeah, the second one had a more end. The first one just felt like it had an ending with the
Yeah. So the second one, I was kind of hoping for a little bit of an epilogue. Really, like they figure out the sound cannons, and I was kind of hoping for like some sort of montage of the rest of the world, because we only know what happened in this tiny little section of the United States. Now, when I was walking out of the theater, I was talking to Fanny, and this might be giving our government and military a little bit too much credit, but I was like, you know what? If they figured out its sound, I'm pretty sure some military scientist figured out. I was like, hey, if we get a high enough frequency, that'll mess these things up, and we can just waste them. Just go.
The Incredible Hulk. Those sound cannons already exist.
Yeah,
but like, they don't have Stark tech.
No, I know.
No.
I would assume that. Sorry.
No, I get it's a movie. I get you have to. I mean, we don't know what the rest of the world looks like. We don't know if.
Also, I disagree. I don't think that would happen, Ben. I don't think for a second that would happen. No military scientist is going, oh, it's sound? Okay, let me make a high frequency thing. You know what would happen? Because we've seen this happen so quickly, all those people would be dead.
Yeah, and then they would just nuke them, and then the whole world would be bad.
I think that the implication, and certainly why I think the opening of this film works better than like the progressional idea of the original, is that the military would have been overwhelmed faster. I think anything in a even more urban area or bigger like congregation of people than the small town we see in the beginning of this movie was wiped out way quicker.
Los Angeles done.
Way quicker.
New York destroyed.
So most military bases, I would assume,
way
fast, just gone.
Once again, we don't know. All we know is what happened on this town.
In the first movie, there's a shot. There's like a war photographer in a battlefield with one of these monsters, like taking pictures of like a military guy shooting the monster. I'm like, how did you get out of there with that camera?
They just found the camera on a dead guy.
Man, that first movie setup does not work. But to what Ben is saying, like I think that the